Hey guys, how's it going? So I'm trying something a little bit new today. I'm going to do a video series that's not going to be programming tutorials. I'm going to answer questions that I usually get either on my website or on in a what do you call a demo, a presentation. So in the city, in New York City where I work, I do weekly demos in my office where I get maybe 10 or 15 people who want to learn how to program, and I get a series of questions afterwards that generally fit a pattern, and they tend to break down into what should I learn, how long will it take before I can become a professional developer. I always get how much money am I going to make, that kind of stuff, and how did you learn? How did I learn? How did I get started? Things like that. And the most common one by far is how to get a job, how to find work, or how to find clients if you're a contractor. So these are very typical questions. Pretty much every demo I do, every workshop I do in the city consists of that. Oftentimes they're from people who just graduated a boot camp. I'm in New York City, so there's a lot of boot camps in the area, like Flatiron School, General Assembly, Full Stack Academy. These are all great programs, and they're graduates. I would say about half my attendees are graduates of these boot camps, who want to either learn whatever I'm talking about that day, and then they typically ask me questions afterwards about how to find work and how to get your foot in the door and things of that sort. So today I want to talk about what's a reasonable expectation as far as learning how to program goes. How long will it take? How long is a reasonable amount of time for a person to become a good programmer, competent, professional, or whatever. Um, so I'll give you my background first. So I'm self-taught, and it took me a while. That's the best way I can put it. It took me a while. Um, I started in 2010. As you're watching this video, as I'm recording this video, it's February 2017. And I started programming in summer of 2010. And I taught myself. I started with a book on C, just regular C, and then I moved on to Objective-C because I was trying to teach myself, excuse me, I was trying to teach myself iPhone programming, and back in those days it was all Objective-C, and then I taught myself Java afterwards. After about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months of that, I taught myself Java so I can do some stuff on the back end, some server-side programming, and pretty much I stuck with those three things for the first year and a half, I would say. So until about 2012. So we're going back to 2010 now. So it was about a year and a half later before I was anywhere near what I call competent. And looking back then, we're talking early 2012 now. Looking back then, I still wasn't any good. I moved to the city in 2012, New York City in 2012, to begin my professional career as a programmer. So if you do the math, you're looking at a year and a half between summer of 2010 and early 2012 to become a professional programmer. So a year and a half where I was teaching myself. I had another job at that point. I was doing, I was teaching math. I was the math teacher. A year and a half of that before I felt anywhere near ready to change my entire career and start over and move to Manhattan and begin my life as a software developer. Um, and in retrospect, I actually wasn't ready at all. I was a terrible programmer in early 2012. This is a year and a half later. And it really wasn't until I got some professional experience that changed my trajectory. Um, so I got a couple contract gigs. I got a couple freelance gigs. Ended up working with a big company, that had a contract with Topps, the sports trading card company, and I ended up working on their iPad app for their fantasy sports games. It was me and a bunch of other guys, and the dev shop that got the contract hired me as a junior dev. And that experience, that was about a 6 or 7 month contract for me, was pretty much the most single biggest turning point of my professional development. I learned more in those 6 or 7 months than I learned in all of the previous 2 years. So it made a big difference, especially working around guys who are just much better than me, much more experienced, and also welcoming of I guess, my general lack of experience. They were good about showing me what I didn't know and how I needed to, catch up, get what I needed to get better on, what my weaknesses were. They're still around. They're in Brooklyn. I wish them, nothing but great success. They were a good team to work with, and I know the contract went pretty well. They're still working on it every season. The Topps baseball card, sports trading card company hires them to build out the football or the baseball, the hockey apps. So it's going pretty well. Um, so how did I even get in to that situation? How did I even get my first gigs? Well, when I picked up programming in 2010, I was pretty strategic about what I wanted to learn. I taught myself Objective-C and iOS programming for a reason, because at that time iOS was still relatively new. The OS at that time was iOS 3, and the most advanced phone, iPhone 4, was just coming out. So right now we're on iPhone 7. So it was still pretty new. The language, as I understood it, wasn't the most popular language, Objective-C, and it's certainly true. It was not the most popular language. So I figured, as a complete newbie, as a complete inexperienced person trying to break into the industry, I thought my best move would be to focus on a field that didn't have as much people experienced in it, but would also have a very high demand. And at that point, the timing was right for iOS. That analysis worked out pretty well for me. So I was able to get these gigs in New York City for all these iOS-based startups that they just had a really hard time finding anyone good in iOS because it was so new. The technology was so new. The language was pretty unorthodox. Objective-C is pretty much not used anywhere else except in the Mac universe, and even Mac did away with it with Swift. So the whole situation put me in the intersection of supply and demand, where you want to be, right in that intersection where there's lack of supply and there's a high demand. And so I was able to read that properly. I had that down right. And so when I moved to New York, I was getting all these offers, not a lot, but I was able to get offers and get my foot in the door. So if I didn't, if I didn't focus on iOS, let's say I instead chose to focus on web development, PHP, that kind of thing, typical web development, it probably wouldn't have played out that way for me. It probably would have been much harder. I still think I would have made it as a software dev, but would have been much more difficult. I certainly wouldn't have been paid as much. No way. When I started out in New York City in 2012, my first contract in New York City was $100 an hour, and that's nowhere near what my value was looking back. That's a simple manifestation of supply and demand. I was just in the right place at the right time, and my skill level was nowhere near commensurate to that rate. In fact, today, I've been doing iOS for 7 years now, right? If I go back into the contract world for iOS, I'd probably still be around that zone, 150 to 100 to 150 per hour in New York City, probably around the same in San Francisco, maybe a little bit higher. In other words, it's been 5 years since I moved to the city. Why wouldn't my rate go up, incrementally? Well, that's because the supply has since caught up to the demand. Excuse me. It's been, iOS is no longer a new technology. It's been about 10 years. So there are many more iOS devs. The supply is caught up. The market has reached equilibrium, as they say in economics. I was an econ major. I was not a CS major in college. So that really made a big difference, was picking up the right technology when I was breaking into the industry. Today, in 2017, that dynamic exists to a lesser extent with React. All the big companies are going to React. Node, React, not as much Node. React is definitely more pronounced in this area. In the back end, things are still kind of, Node, Python, even Ruby on Rails. These are still pretty relevant technology. But on the front end, Angular 1 they're done. They're losing that word. There's still plenty of Angular 1 work out there, but it's all legacy code. It's not growing. You're not going to start a new project in Angular 1, or at least you shouldn't. Anyone who's going to start a new project, if any developer starts a new project on Angular 1, which I still see on occasion, that's only because they only know Angular 1 and they don't want to learn anything new. Right? These are the guys who never pick up new skills. They just sort of stay where they are. That's another phenomenon in software development you see a lot. But one thing I do a lot is just go on job boards, not because I'm necessarily looking for a job, but because I want to see where things are going. This is very important. So let's see here. If I go to Hacker News, who's hiring? January, let's do February 2017. Okay. So let's see how this breaks down. If I do a search for React, this is a fake one. Hold on, I clicked on the wrong one. Hacker News, who's hiring? Let's do January. Who wants to be hired? What is this? Hold on. I'm clicking on the wrong links here. Excuse me. That's more like it. So I know this is the right one because it has 1,200 comments. That's a more typical volume for these threads. So let's try a search for React, and we have 284 matches. That doesn't mean there's 284 listings. It just means the word React shows up 284 times. So, and then let's do a search for Angular. I think the verdict is pretty loud and clear. It's 284 versus 93 for Angular, right? So every month I do this in my demo. I do literally this search in my demo, and that ratio has been shifting every single month. So when I first started the company about a year ago, Velocity 360, it wasn't quite 1-to-1. It was more like 3-to-2, maybe 1.5 React appearances for every 1 Angular appearance, and slowly it just went up. So now we're looking at like 3-to-1. So the market is speaking pretty loud and clear. Angular has lost to React, handily. So this is a good spot because React it's not really new anymore. It certainly hit that inflection point where it's becoming the mainstream stack for developers. Boot camps are starting to get wise to this. They're switching their curriculums over to React. I know Full Stack Academy announced that they're doing React in their curriculum rather than Angular 1 for the first time this year. So they're starting that. I don't know about Flatiron School or GA or any of those other places yet, Dev Bootcamp, but I'm sure they're working on it. Suffice to say, they all have to keep up. So right now, if you're new to software, it's a good spot to learn React because everyone, all the major companies are moving their stacks over to it. Like Uber, Airbnb, they're all using React. Obviously Facebook, they invented it. So yeah, it's a good time to get in there because it's still new that the supply hasn't quite caught up to demand in React. So you can distinguish yourself early if you're good at React, and even more so if you're good at one of those state management frameworks, libraries like Redux. What are some of the other ones? MobX or MobX, whatever it's called, Relay. If you're really good at one of those, I mean Redux is pretty much the standard, but if you're pretty good at like MobX or Relay, you're still going to distinguish yourself. Or even just straight up Flux, the lower level implementation of the one-way data store. Although I would recommend going with a library like Redux, because that seems to be the standard. Actually, let's do a search here. Let's see. Redux makes 61 appearances. MobX makes only 2. Relay. All right, so I think we have our answer there as well. So React, Redux combined shows up 284 plus 61. I don't know the math on that, but 300 something times. So it's pretty clear that that's where you want to focus your energy. And like I said, the supply has not quite caught up to demand yet, so this is a good spot to be in right now. The only one difference between this dynamic with React Redux today and iOS from 5 years ago when I was doing iOS is the language is not different. React is a JavaScript library, and same as Redux and all that stuff. So it's easier for devs to switch over from one to the other, especially if you already have been using some front-end MVC framework like Backbone or Ember or whatever, Angular in my case. So making the switch from one to the other is not as onerous as it is for iOS, for example. And that's a differentiating factor. What that means for you, if you're a beginner, is that you don't have as much time. You need to get up to speed more quickly. The demands are higher because it didn't take me that long to learn React. It took me about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months before I was competent, and then another 3 months before I was good. I started teaching myself React in late 2015, so right around the Thanksgiving holiday of 2015, so a little bit over a year ago. And I was good, by my assessment, I was good by spring 2016, so I don't know, 5 or 6 months. And by summer, I was doing React professional work. People were reaching out to me because they found my company, and they would say, "We need some React devs. Can you help us out?" And it kind of just fell in my lap. That's a manifestation of the demand. So I'm not going out looking for contracts. I'm not actively seeking contracts right now. I'm not as aggressive about it as I was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. If I was, my whole day-to-day life would be quite different. I'd be putting up a lot of posts on Medium. I'd be going on not Hacker News, AngelList, Indeed, all that stuff, and I'd be putting out the resume, all that nonsense. I'll make a post about that later, about kind of the job search process and how I did it, and how what I did to effectively make that work year after year after year. I'll make another post about that, but right now it's more about kind of where you should be focusing your energy. So, I feel bad for a lot of these people who go into software dev to a boot camp. I'm not going to name names, but I'm going to drop $14,000 and they end up learning Angular 1, like right now. Right? It's February 2017, and if you're learning Angular 1, you're learning mean stack because the boot camp can't find React instructors, right? And so they're kind of stuck, or they themselves don't know React and good enough to teach it. But the boot camp has to operate. It has to turn a profit. It has to keep on churning students in and out. So rather than shutting down operations for 3, 4, 5 months while they restaff on React, they just keep on pumping in new cohorts every 12 weeks teaching Angular 1. Unfortunately, if you're one of these students and you're not very savvy on the tech, you don't have your finger on the pulse of where tech is going, you're kind of walking into a hornet's nest. Like now you're learning Angular 1, which is not an easy thing to learn, especially for a beginner, but this is a dying technology, right? It's a framework that's not starting anything new. You just saw on the Hacker News the comparisons, and like I'm not making this up. This is like my conjecture. This is based on just raw data, right? So I'm a numbers guy. I don't operate on like my gut feeling. Like this is the numbers. It's just right in front of you. So if you're learning Angular 1 and you're spending $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 in 3 months, and you're taking out loans and you're quitting your job, it's kind of from a boot camp's perspective, it's kind of, you're not servicing your customer very well, right? I mean, I don't know. That's a whole other topic as well. And that's a different conversation, to be honest. But if you're teaching yourself like I did, and you're trying to figure out where to focus your energy, on the front end, the answer is loud and clear. It's React. For me, I made the right decision on iOS. However, I did make the wrong decision on the back end. If you caught what I said earlier, I taught myself Java, um, so that I could learn some back end programming. Well, what back end frameworks use Java? Not that many. I mean, it's not. You got Ruby on Rails, Django, Python, Django. These are the major frameworks. Um, Obviously, Node Express or Express, which is the web framework for Node, or Sails if you use that. Even like Laravel for PHP. What I have not mentioned is any framework that uses Java. So why the hell did I do that? Because I was at the time I was looking into a platform called Google App Engine, and they had opened up their platform, which is basically like a Heroku that Google runs, kind of. That's the best way I can describe it. And they when they opened the platform, they opened it up for Python and for Java. Those are the two. So the reason I chose Java was because being a complete new like programmer, I had heard of Java, but I had not heard of Python. To me, Python was the lesser known of the two. So I thought Java was more mainstream, and then take that in conjunction with the Google brand name. This is 2010, so Google was already established. It was already Google. I felt it was a good bet. And I was looking into the Amazon system, the AWS, which is relatively new at that point, and it was not the behemoth it is today. So it wasn't as obvious that AWS would handily win this cloud computing war. Like there's no other game in town. At the time, I didn't really know that would be the case, and I just thought Amazon was that bookstore, right, where you can buy books and DVDs and stuff like that. So, and Google had the more tech reputation to me. So I made the decision to go with Java. And this was the wrong choice. I should have gone with Python. I should have taught myself Python Django in 2010 and focused all my energy on Python Django, not worked on App Engine. App Engine is great, by the way. I'm not saying App Engine is not the right choice, but a good choice. But professionally, there weren't as many opportunities using App Engine than there are as Python Django. We can run Python Django on App Engine, but you hear what I'm saying. If you knew Python Django and you're able to run that framework on an EC2 instance or an EC2 cluster, with a load balancer and an autoscaler and things like that. These are all things I can do now, but at the time, that was so foreign to me. It was so opaque. I just didn't like. I didn't want to get into it. If hold on, there's something on the screen. If I didn't know that would be the industry standard, right? I mean, here, let's use this again. So Django, 55 matches for Django, and I'm going to see probably none for App Engine. All right, so 3 for App Engine, right? Clearly, I made the wrong choice there. But at the time, I had no guidance. I had to keep in mind I was teaching myself. I was not in New York City. I was in Connecticut. So there was nowhere, like, there were no co-working spaces. There were no, like, meetups to go to. There was just nowhere I could get, I didn't know how to get good instruction, good guidance. So I just trusted my intuition, which was wrong in this case. So I ended up doing App Engine for like 3 years. That was a major part of my development experience, is Google App Engine. I mean, even today I can still get into it and really make something cool on it. But it's about what opportunities open up based on what you learn, right? So the iOS decision was unequivocally the right call, but going into Java and then App Engine was, I wouldn't say equally and equally bad on the other end. It just wasn't as good as if I'd done Python Django on EC2 or even Heroku, and or Ruby on Rails on Heroku. But these were things that I just didn't understand in 2010. So that's a big factor of consideration as well. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling right now. I don't really have a direction of where I'm going with all this, but it's more about kind of how I situated myself in this industry and how things shook out for me. It's definitely different today with these boot camps, and there are a lot more online options. Code Academy, obviously, I guess Khan Academy, Udemy, and all those credit courses, or I don't know. You get the idea. All those certificate courses, excuse me, and some stuff on iTunes U. It's a lot easier today than it was when I was starting out. Not that it was that long ago, but yeah, there's a lot more opportunity. But what that also means is there's a lot more opportunity to go down the wrong path, and I certainly did that in several areas. I'll explain in another post kind of all the mistakes I made. I'll make that a whole separate post, like all the mistakes I made teaching myself programming, and why it took me a year and a half when it really should have taken me maybe 6 to 9 months to get near professional grade, to get my first job, to get really going professionally. It took me about twice as long as I think it should have. It wasn't because it was like, I was moving half as fast. It was because I was learning the wrong things. For prolonged periods of time, like App Engine. Or again, App Engine's good. I don't want to crap on it, but another example would be like OpenGL. I spent 3 months trying to teach myself OpenGL, and that was crazy. That was just the wrong move. I thought all the animations you see in iPhone apps are made in OpenGL. That's not true. You can do that. It's just one way. It also happens to be probably the hardest way. And I just didn't know any better. So these are, I didn't lose hours or days. I lost months to that. It's a lot of time. Programming is hard. So you want to really focus your energy in the right spots. So I don't really have a moral to all this. I'm just giving you sort of a rundown of what I went through, some of my experiences as a programmer now that I'm on year 7. I can't believe it's been 7 years. I still feel like I'm learning a lot. I am learning a lot. I still feel like I have a lot to learn is a better way to put it. And sometimes I still feel like I'm just a newbie. So it's tough, but I love it, and that's what keeps you going. So yeah, if you have any other questions, not really sure the best way to do this. I didn't think this through. I think what I'll do here on my website, here's my website. If you're interested, check that out. I think what I'll do is I'll add a link here just called Forum, where people can just post Q&A, and we can go back and forth that way. If you want to, if you have any suggestions, or put some comments in the YouTube comment. That probably makes the most sense. Put some comments in the YouTube section, and about anything you want me to, I don't know, talk about, answer, things like that. And I'll try this series for a while, see if people like it. If you do, great. If not, I'll just go back to tutorials. So thanks for watching.